Welcome to today's Explainer. We're taking a microscopic look at the encyclical unum sint at its 25-year mark, a landmark religious text that honestly completely rewrote the rules of institutional history. If you're fascinated by how massive centuries-old institutions actually pivot over time, well, we're diving deep into exactly how that happens. We're unpacking a highly specific academic review that acts kind of like a time capsule. It lets us measure the ongoing shockwaves of a few profoundly disruptive words written decades ago. Let's look at the exact moment this shift was permanently recorded and how scholars are measuring its seismic impact today. Okay, let's dive into this. 25. A quarter of a century. This number really anchors our entire journey today, marking the silver anniversary of this foundational document back in May of 2020. Now, in the timeline of an institution that measures its history in millennia, 25 years might seem like just a brief blink of an eye. But for academic assimilation and real-world, practical application, a quarter of a century is literally the perfect checkpoint. Why? Because 25 years is the exact moment when a text stops being just a recent novelty or a trendy talking point and finally begins to be evaluated for its actual, undeniable historical weight. It's when the dust settles, and we can finally see what was permanently built. And that brings us to the first pillar of our analysis, a historical anniversary. We are looking at this milestone through the lens of a highly regarded academic review published by scholar Pablo Blanco Sarto in the prestigious journal Palabra. Now, to be clear, this retrospective article is far from a superficial pat-on-the-back celebration. Instead, Blanco Sarto's work functions as a rigorous, critical lens. It helps modern scholars look back and ruthlessly evaluate the real, tangible footprint this original document left on the ground. It serves as a powerful reminder that great historical texts don't just exist in a vacuum once they're published, right? They require continuous, demanding retrospectives from sharp academic minds to prove their ongoing relevance. So, the novelty of ecumenism. To truly grasp the significance of Blanco Sarto's academic review, we really have to pause and look at the raw material he is analyzing. Why does this specific document stand out so sharply against the incredibly dense, vast history of the Church? I mean, think about the centuries of decrees, letters, and bulls. It creates an almost overwhelming mountain of literature. Yet, the specific text Blanco Sarto is reviewing managed to break a millennial mold. It introduced an institutional novelty so profound that it has quite literally never been formalized at this supreme level before. It represented a hard pivot into completely uncharted territory for the institution. Let's clarify exactly what that monumental innovation was. Unum sint holds a huge historic title. It is the very first encyclical in the entire history of the Church dedicated exclusively to ecumenism. And ecumenism, as a quick refresher, is the concerted search for unity among all Christians. Think about the sheer gravity of that for a second. Prior to this document, sure, ecumenism was discussed, but there had never been a document of this absolute highest papal category, an encyclical, focused singularly and totally on this unifying mission. This elevated the pursuit of unity to the highest possible official platform. It was an absolute game changer for how the institution interacted with the rest of the Christian world. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the core message itself. Rather than getting lost in broad historical generalities, Blanco Sarto's 25-year review dives straight into the architectural core of the text. He drills down to extract the philosophical and directive heart of the original document. By isolating the exact phrasing used, we can see how the framework of the institution's future was being actively re-engineered. He pinpoints the precise, deliberate words chosen by John Paul II to permanently cement this unprecedented message into the bedrock of the institution. It's in these specific linguistic choices that we find the true power of the encyclical, moving it from a mere suggestion into an unshakable mandate. Listen closely to this specific quote from section 20 of the document. The movement promoting Christian unity is not just some sort of appendix which is added to the Church's traditional activity. Rather, it belongs organically to her life and work. There is a profound philosophical weight packed into this formulation. For centuries, the traditional activity of the Church was heavily focused inward, on its own preservation, its own rituals, and its own immediate flock. By stating that the push for broader Christian unity is no longer an external add-on, the author is entirely redefining the foundational DNA of the institution's day-to-day operations using two highly specific opposing concepts. Let's break down this text comparison. Think conceptually about the sharp dichotomy between an appendix and something that is organic. An appendix is just something tacked on after the fact, right? It's an extra, external feature that you could theoretically remove entirely, and the main body would just keep functioning exactly as it did before. Now, contrast that with something described as organic. Something organic is inextricably woven into the central nervous system. If you try to remove an organic component, you fundamentally alter the life, health, and essence of the body itself. This massive conceptual leap, from a disposable, optional extra to an essential biological necessity, is the exact paradigm shift that Blanco Sardo brilliantly highlights.
So, why does this linguistic shift in US2 matter so much to the everyday observer? Well, by declaring unity as life and action in Section 20, the document permanently eliminated any lingering institutional excuses to treat ecumenism as a simple side project or a hobby for a select few diplomats. It cemented this mission directly into the traditional activity of every member. It meant that seeking common ground wasn't just for specialized committees anymore. It became a mandatory operational standard from the highest leadership all the way down to the local level. This fundamental change in directive altered how millions of individuals globally were instructed to view and respect their neighbors.
Let's move to and see how this builds into the broader academic context. This single document obviously didn't just exist in a vacuum. If we step back and look at the metadata surrounding our source, we uncover a massive, vibrant ecosystem of interconnected academic research. It becomes immediately clear that evaluating monumental texts at major anniversaries is a rich, ongoing tradition within this field. Scholars are constantly engaged in a highly structured dialogue with the past. They use these milestone dates as a catalyst to reopen historical texts and subject them to the harsh light of modern scrutiny, making sure the ideas haven't just aged, but actively matured. We see this exact same rigorous stress testing applied across a wide variety of other major foundational works. For instance, the academic records show extensive 25-year retrospectives for influential texts like Mater et Magistra and the Constitution Ex Corde Ecclesia, along with detailed 10-year evaluations for works like Fetus and Ratio. This highlights a very robust academic tradition. Researchers systematically evaluate how these grand theoretical ideas have actually withstood the friction and chaos of the real world over the decades. They don't just celebrate the publication dates, they relentlessly audit the ongoing results to see if those bold promises actually translated into measurable long-term change. Furthermore, the specific conversation about ecumenical unity branches out into some incredibly fascinating, specialized directions. Blanco Sarto's review is really just one crucial node in a much larger global conversation. The surrounding research dives into the original conciliar decree on ecumenism, creating a deeper historical baseline. Other studies meticulously track how this specific encyclical was received regionally, looking at the unique challenges it faced in places like Spain. There are even deep dive analyses tackling the immense ongoing structural complexities of the topic, like the intense challenge of shared primacies. It's a dynamic, living web of scholarship for sure. It is genuinely fascinating to consider the sheer density of the specific source we've been unpacking today. Blanco Sardo's review was formally published in May of 2020 by author Pablo Blanco Sardo in issue 691 of the journal Palabra. And get this, it spans a mere 4 pages, running from page 41 to 44. Yet, in that incredibly concentrated, brief space, the author manages to effectively encapsulate a quarter-century of complex institutional history. It is a true testament to the power of precise academic writing, demonstrating how a compact review can distill decades of widespread global impact into just a few highly focused pages of text. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a lingering thought directly inspired by the core dichotomy we just explored. If we truly accept the profound premise of this text, that the pursuit of unity is no longer a disposable appendix, but is now organically connected to the very life and action of the institution, how does that permanently transform the way future historians and scholars will record the next several decades? It provides a remarkably powerful lens through which to view not just the echoes of the past, but the uncharted trajectory of the future. Thank you for joining us for today's explainer. Keep your curiosity sharp, and we'll see you next time.